To begin our discussion of Chapter 5, first we need to get some definitions on the board. And so I'm going to write some words and help you with the definition. The first word is the word chord. So when we talk about a chord, we're talking about a group of notes that is bigger than an interval. So let me just remind you that an interval is always two notes. The definition of a chord is a combination of three or more notes. Now, the or more is the important part because it can be any number of notes. So we have special names for chords that consist only of three notes. So if we use the word chord, we're really using a very generic term. Now, the word chord can have other components. We can put prefixes with it. So if I talk about a trichord, then I am talking specifically about a group of three notes. Now, here's the interesting part about a trichord. A trichord can be built in any combination of notes. So let's say three notes, but now let me put some staff paper here, and I'll show you how I mean that it can be any combination. So let me just draw a clef, and I'm going to stack three notes together. Now, what I want to call your attention to is the interval between them. So here I've created a fourth, F to B, F, G, A, B, count on your fingers. So that's a fourth, and then how about the top one, B, E, A, D, that's also a fourth. It's still a trichord. But now let me draw a different combination. So now we have three notes, and it's still a trichord, but this time they're built with thirds. Now what I want to remind you about is that thirds are consonant intervals. They're pretty sounding. So therefore, when we build a trichord in thirds, we can predict that it will sound pleasant. When we use other intervals, we don't have that assurance. In fact, this particular sound, F, B, and E, is really quite unpleasant. So we have a special name when we have trichords, specifically three notes, that are built using intervals of thirds. So let's put that on our list. We're going to go to the word triad. So we're going to say three notes, but they must be built using thirds. So this actually combines our study of intervals with our definition of chords. So we have to know what thirds are in order to understand what triads are. Now, let me put a star by this word because that's the important word for the chapter. In fact, it is the title of the chapter. And we are going to confine our study of chords to triads for this chapter. Three notes that are put together using thirds. Now, I'm going to put my staff paper back up here, and we want to look at some interesting aspects of triads. This will be true no matter what the clef sign is, but when I build these chords, specifically triads, using space notes, all three of the notes are space notes because that's how we create thirds on the staff. Or if my bottom note is a line note, then all three notes are line notes. So what we have here is a nice, simple picture that these chords create. They are all spaces or all lines. Now, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do one more diagram, and I'm going to draw, I need to draw something really big, so I'm not going to use my staff paper. I'm going to draw an enormous staff. Okay, so great big, so I can write in the middle of the lines. I'm going to put a clef sign, and so I'm going to write my triad. Each of these notes, no matter what the letter names associated with them, each note has its own particular term. So the lowest note we call the root. And we call it the root because it's the foundation of the chord. It's where the rest of the chord is built up from. Now, the middle note is called the chordal third. So let's write that down. Now, we're not just calling it a third because when we talk about thirds, we're talking about two notes. By saying chordal third, we're placing it in a context, the context being it's the middle note of this group of three notes. And so this one is going to be called, the top one, is going to be called the chordal fifth. Now, these are terms that apply to any triad. So if I were to rewrite another great big staff, okay, and I do line notes, we still have root, chordal third, chordal fifth. So this moves with the position of the chord on the staff. These are terms that I will be using continuously throughout Chapter 5, so they are terms that you need to be very familiar with.